and a piano phone. By the way, I have to say that there are, if I were to say the people who were most effective in this battle, if I were to say the women in this issue, I would say Candace Keller, Lori Vyers, who stood with me from start to finish, Julie Busby, who is here. We prayed every day for an hour for nearly a decade for this bill. Thank you for that. My mother, who gave birth to me and stood with me every step of the way, whose birthday is tomorrow. I would sing to you, but Candace says I don't have time. You know, when we started this battle, they said it was impossible. They laughed at us and they said it just can't be done. All we can do is regulate around the edges of abortion. And I want to tell you that I am speaking from experience that what was once impossible is now inevitable. We're going to end abortion. People didn't believe me when we started. I kept saying we're going to end abortion. But when we started, when there was only regulatory bills in America, we introduced this bill no one had ever heard of to keep hearts beating. Here's the bill. I can tell you very quickly in one sentence. The bill says if a heartbeat is detected, the baby is protected. It's really not so hard. They're probably going to try and ban that. If Dr. Seuss is illegal, they'll come after my phrase. But since we introduced that bill now 11 years ago, heartbeat bills have passed in Arkansas, North Dakota, Iowa, Kentucky, Mississippi, Georgia, Missouri, Louisiana, in Tennessee, last 2 weeks ago in South Carolina, and in Ohio, where it all began. We're going to end abortion. And every single one of those bills was crafted to be the arrow to pierce the heart of Roe versus Wade, and they have now been launched through the court system to deliver the fatal blow to abortion on demand. It is happening. It is inevitable. They cannot stop it. We are, as Phil pointed out so eloquently, we are the land of the free because of the brave. And people, I've been doing interviews, and they say, you know, you wrote a book. I wrote a book called The Criminalization of Christianity. And I made a movie about how to overcome the criminalization of Christianity. And they say, with these bleak times, these dark times, how are we going to overcome them? And I'm like, well, that's not what I'm here to talk about today. But I made a movie about it, and I'll send it to you for free. They're gonna hand out some sheets. If you want to put your email down, I'll email it to you for free. You can watch the 30-minute version of Light Winds, How to Overcome the Criminalization of Christianity, because we are going to overcome the criminalization of Christianity. And if we knew, I'm just going to tell you, if we knew what God was doing behind the scenes, we would be filled with hope. We would be filled with faith, and we would be filled with excitement and anticipation like a kid on Christmas. That's where we are right now. That's what I feel in my heart. Our beloved president, who is the duly elected president of the United States, Donald J. Trump, is coming back. And it's going to be sooner, perhaps, than everyone thinks. Praise the Lord. You know, when we were standing outside for the federal heartbeat bill, we were actually outside the room, and the man who passed the first heartbeat bill in Arkansas, Senator Jason Rapert, stood there, and he brought with him the Appeal to Heaven flag. You know, you've seen that? It's got an evergreen on it, and it's basically when we were becoming a country, we did not stand an earthly chance, going against the most powerful nation in the world, and yet here we are, Americans. Why? Because our nation's first flag was the Appeal to Heaven flag. We made an appeal to heaven, and God answered us, and we're doing it again. He's going to answer us again. I know it. And we stood outside with that flag. And that's when I knew the heartbeat bill was going to become law nationally, because you know what? We weren't supposed to be a nation, and yet here we are. President Trump wasn't supposed to be elected in 2016, and yet he was. And he was elected again last year, and he's coming back. I just have to say that again. Candace says talk about courage, but many people don't realize I was the kid who was afraid to give a speech. I couldn't give a speech. But I did it anyway. That's what you do. Because it's not about our talent, and it's not about our giftings. It's not about whether we're even musical. It's about who lives in us, the God of the universe. And so what I want to say is, if you're here and you're a conservative, that's a good start. But if you're a conservative, you can be totally apart from God. What I want to say, in fact, Reinhard Bonnke, former evangelist, late Reinhard Bonnke, an evangelist, said that he's heard that Christianity, some say Christianity is boring. He says, so is television if you don't plug it in. If we're plugged into the source, then he's going to say, you know what, he's going to give us the power and the authority we need, and all we need to do is trade our sins. I made this little track. I'll give some out if you want one. I've got them here. And here's what I did. I spelled out the gospel in one simple card, and it says, all have sinned. You know the verse, all sin fall short of the glory of God. And the price for sin is death. But who do you want to pay for it? Here's the choice. A, you, or B, Jesus. I choose Jesus. And if Jesus pays for your sin, and you give him your sin, he gives you your purpose and destiny. Christianity, you see, is the only place where you get to find out who you are and why you're here. There is a purpose and there is a destiny. And you know what? If we spend time with God, if we make history with God, he will make history through us. How many people believe this book that I have, this Holy Bible? Raise your hand. By the way, the security team, if you're looking for who is not raising their hand, those are the ones you want to target. But I want to say actions are what you believe. Everything else is political talk. Everything else is religious rhetoric. If you believe our state motto, which is true because Jesus was the one who said it, that with God all things are possible, I want to know what you're doing to see the impossible bow to the name of Jesus. You'll step out and do what can't be done. Winston Churchill put it this way: great success always comes at the risk of enormous failure. When you spend time with God, then you have what replaces the fear of man is the fear of God. And when you step out, I knew God was going to do it. I didn't know how long it was going to take, right, Laura? And I didn't know how hard it was going to be. But I knew he was going to do it. And people say, how is it that you won? And the answer is, we just wouldn't quit. And that's what you do. And we're not quitting on America. We're going to take it back. So when we started the Heartbeat Bill, I want to tell you, when you set out to do something, but I touched the trumpet, Phil Driscoll. That's pretty cool. Sorry, I fingered it all up. That's pretty cool. Yeah, I was on stage with his trumpet. Get a picture with it later. There were times when we filled up the State House and it was so full. John, you remember, we had people overflowing outside. We rented out every seat there was. We had a supporter list that was 5 feet tall. I held it over my head. It was as tall as I am. All the people who came out supported, including Josh Mandel, who was a hero and remains a hero of the movement. The only statewide officer that stood with us there in the beginning. And I'll say that there were times when we were the most popular kid in town. And then there were times when the rhinos in the Senate blocked us and everybody scattered. There was a time when I could count on one hand who were my friends. See, there was Lori Vyers, Candace Keller, Ron Hood, and Julie was there, my mom. That's about it for a time. And yet, what I'm telling people around the country is you don't need a big army to end abortion. You need a remnant of people who will do whatever it takes and never, ever quit. We wore them out. We wore them out. And I'll tell you my favorite story. Morton Blackwell said this. He said, "Don't fully trust anyone until he is stuck with a cause which was losing." All right, he's stuck with the cause that was losing. They should trust us because we stuck with a cause that had no hope. And there was 2018. We had been vetoed once. Ohio Right to Life testified against the bill. They ran ads against me. They called for a veto. They celebrated with the abortionists right alongside when the veto came, and we were facing a second veto. And I remember Ron Hood and Candace called and they said, we're going to try and get a vote before Christmas, before the clock runs out. Do you want to just wait till Mike DeWine shows up? I said, no. If you have an opportunity to do right, it's never the wrong time to do the right thing. And I said, we do it now. And so we were just driving down to Columbus, and I told a friend on the phone, I said, we're 15 votes short of a veto override majority. We need 60 votes. This is going to take an act of God. And I said it in a way like it's hopeless. And they said to me, wait, isn't that what you're counting on all along? Isn't that really what this is all about? Actions are what you believe. Everything else is religious talk. And I said, all right, we're going to go down there. We're going to try and do what can't be done. And so we lobbied for a day. Nobody could come the day before the vote. Everybody likes to come on the vote because that's fun sometimes. but the day before, nobody was there. It was the sound of crickets, but I was there. I had my whip cards. And you remember, John, John, I put to work. Where are you anyway, John? There you are. You remember I gave you 6 of these whip cards, right? Hey, you know these guys, you're in committee with him. Can you get me these 10 votes? Candace, can you get me these 20 votes? We need these votes. And by the end of the day, we were 2 or 3 votes short, which is pretty miraculous. But the next day was the vote. And so we still needed 2 or 3, and it didn't look good. I said, if we're going to pull this off, we're going to need a Democrat that we never got before. There was one man, a Democrat, the only guy that voted with us from the Democratic Party. His name was Bill Patman, a statesman. And this guy, I met with him at noon. The vote is at 1 o'clock. I said, Bill, we got to get one. We got to get one other Democrat if we have a shot at this to get veto override vote. The only chance we have. And so we tag team a guy, couldn't get him. I said, there's a guy named Glenn Holmes. And I wrote down, and I was writing here's the concerns. See if you can get to him. Text me if you do. And so the session begins to start. The bells are ringing. And I'm down there by myself. And they're coming out. You don't think this is a spiritual battle? They're coming out full-fledged right now. They're wearing, literally, their shirts say, pro-abort witch. They got pentagram earrings the size of saucers, and they all have their phones aimed at me. All right? It's really fun. And I'm like, where's Lori? Where are you, Lori? She came, and we handed out our gift bags. They were menacing, and they were threatening, and we're handing out chocolates, saying, thanks for having a heart. Thank you for keeping hearts beating. And we had little heart chocolates and talking points, colorful talking points. We're handing those out, and we get up to the chamber. The session begins, and I get a text from Bill Patman, and it says, done. Like, oh, my goodness, we got a shot at this. We actually have a shot. I still think we might need another vote or 2, but we're close. And right then they call for a recess. And I'm still trying to get a few more votes. I'm going to the chamber. I'm kind of short, and I'm looking through the window to see if I could pick up another vote or something. And Bill Patman comes up to me and he says, "You're going to strain your legs standing on your tiptoes so long." And I just hugged him, and I said, he says, "You know what's going on right now, don't you?" I said, "What's that?" He says, "The Democrats are circling this guy, Glenn Holmes. They're threatening him of his political death if he votes our way." And I said, "Is he going to hold firm?" He says, "I don't know." And so this African-American Democrat and I held hands that day outside the chambers, and we prayed. And the session began. And it went for hours. And we needed 60 votes to win. 60. Never been done before on a bill like this. 60 votes. And I had been told not to take a picture of the board. But my intern had not been told not to take pictures in the gallery. And so he took I said, "When that vote happens, I need that board. I'm not going to wait for it to come out the next day. I need it now." And so when Kent Keller was another hero who had took a picture, we were looking at his phone. But what happened was the vote is cast. I need 60. And the vote was 58-35. And something in me, it's not like, oh, well, we tried. There was something in me that said, something's not right. We had more votes than that. This isn't right. And so we go outside the chamber. We're looking at the phone, and 10 minutes go by, and Glenn Holmes went forward, after the vote, and voted yes on the heartbeat bill. We are now at 59-35, 1 vote away. Again, what's the state motto? With God, all things are possible. I don't think he takes us within an inch of our victory and to leave us hanging. And I'm like, you know what? We're going to find out. Wait a minute. Marilyn Schlaby, it's either red or green if you yes or no vote. And hers was an orange. I said, why is her name an orange? They said, maybe she's not here. I said, no, I saw her. I gave her a gift bag. They said, well, maybe they flipped her. I said, no, not this one. She was a co-sponsor. Her husband was a co-sponsor before her. Nino Vitale, a state rep, said, I'll self-identify as a female and look for her in the ladies' room if it'll help. And so we get her phone number. We get the phone number of her husband, Lynn, who was on the first heartbeat bill when he held the office before her. I said, Lynn, there's 3 votes on the calendar right now. We've got less than an hour to get her back. And he said to me, that's impossible. We are 2 hours away for a mandatory meeting I cannot miss. I don't know if something in me didn't give up. I just said, yeah, can you pull off the highway? Because I'm on my way to get her right now. And he said yes. And they pulled off at a Holmes County Bob Evans, and I grabbed my bags and ran. I wear boots a lot because I can run in them. They don't have heels, and I can run. And so I'm running 2.5 blocks to get to my car. It is now snowing like a blizzard. And I'm running 2.5 blocks to get to my car, to get on the road. And I tell one group, you remember this, Lori, I said, where's Julie? I said, Julie, you guys pray, and you tell them to stall until we get back. I don't know if they had a Mr. Smith this through the phone book. I don't care. We're going to try, right? So I run 2.5 blocks. I'm out of breath. I get to my car, and I don't have my keys. And so this man walks up to my car, not out of breath in any way, completely calm and peaceful, and said, here, you drop these in the crosswalk. And so my husband said he's either a marathon runner or an angel. I think it was the latter. And I'm like, sir, thank you so much. You have no idea. And I'm running in the car. I'm driving north like a maniac, not maybe in the most pro-life of fashions. And I remember, wait, Josh, the kid who took a picture was an intern of mine. His mom was an intern back in the days when I was working at Right to Life. And I said, call your mom and have her pick up Marilyn Schlaby at the Bob Evans. And he said, yes. She gets in the car. She's driving south. We're driving north. We meet in Mansfield. My husband calls me, what are you doing? I said, I'm driving 80 miles an hour through a blizzard. And he just started laughing. He says, I said, it's impossible. This vote is impossible. We have, it's a 4-hour round trip. We have less than an hour to get her back. And he just started laughing. And he says, I knew it was going to happen when you said that. And we met in Mansfield. And sometimes when you set out to do the impossible, that you don't know how. We don't know how it's going to happen. And Ron Hood called me and he said, Jan, you can slow down. He said, because we got to the speaker and we talked him into recessing the meeting rather than adjourning the meeting so that 2 members, he and the lady in my car, can hold a session and vote for the bill. So the news reports are already out that we lost. It's already reported in the news. It's on television. It's on the news wires. They don't know. We're in the car heading back, and the Democrats don't know, or they would have voted against adjourning, right, against the recess. So anyway, we get to the State House. We go forward. It was like a movie. That we're still in our coats. And Ron Hood's got the gavel in his hand. You remember this, Lori. And he said, House Bill 253 for third consideration, slaps the gavel down. Marilyn Schlaby, wearing her coat, signs yes. And I just fell to my feet and started sobbing. That's how we overrode the veto in the House of Representatives in Ohio. With God, all things are possible. I want to say we had the votes in the Senate to override the governor as well. But I don't like put people on the spot. The guy who flipped on us, the guy that betrayed the babies, his name is Bill Beagle. Bill Beagle, like a dog, voted against the babies. And so 4 months later, we had a stronger bill, one of the strongest bills in the country to keep hearts beating. And I want to tell you that the God of the impossible is alive today. And what he did for us then, he will do for us again. He's going to do it now. We're going to take America back from the Marxists. That's what's about to happen. I want to just say to you, my time is up, but I want to just say that I just want to say this, that what I've been telling people now for decades is that we're going to end abortion. They're starting to believe me now. They're starting to get a hold of this thing. As Candace said, 29 states have got this thing going in different capacities. They're moving through Texas, just reintroduced it again. And it's going on in Michigan and Florida. And they just got the model bill to a sponsor a senator in West Virginia. It's happening all over the country. It's now, they want to do a heartbeat bill in Canada. And yes, other countries are now interested in keeping hearts beating because if there's a heartbeat, there's life. Everybody gets that. It's why, by the way, when we rolled in the mobile ultrasound in the committee room, that we brought in the youngest to ever testify, when the pro-aborts went crazy. Janet and her gimmicks, Janet and her stunts, this is ridiculous. And they put the camera in front of me, and I said, isn't it sad that to defend your position, you've got to deny science? You've got to run from technology. That's a sad place to be. And yet they do it. But what I'm telling you, by the way, I'll tell you one other story. As we were wheeling in that ultrasound in Congress for the federal heartbeat bill in the U.S. House Judiciary Committee, there was a little baby Lincoln, who was 18 weeks old in the womb. And there were protesters there. They were disruptive and obnoxious, and they were there in the committee room making noise. And when that baby's heart was beating in Congress, the room was silent. And I looked to see that one of the protesters, who had been formally disruptive, was seen wiping tears from her eyes. And that's when I realized if a heartbeat can reach even the hardest of hearts, it will reach America, and that's what's happening. I just want to finally say this. We're going to end abortion. And ending abortion is just the beginning. God bless you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Janet. Isn't she amazing? She spoke at an event that I have every year for the Pregnancy Center before the virus, and every year before that I could raise about $40,000 or $50,000, and when she spoke I raised $120,000 to save babies. So on that vein, I am going to take an offering. Is this a good moment to do that? I bought 2 golden trash cans. You like that? Right here. This is not obviously a for-profit event or ministry or agency. What this is spreading the message that this is a citizen-led movement that's going to take this country back. And so none of the speakers who come in charge me anything, but I do have to pay for their hotel and their travel expenses. And all of the handouts that we've given you have been rather expensive. Somebody at this church Wednesday night came up and handed me money for this event, and I really, really appreciate it. So if you could make any donation at all tonight, or today, it would really help us cover these costs. And I would sing, but I'll spare you that. So, you know, if you find it in your heart, we also have a little red box out front, and all the money, of course, will go so that we can do this in any county that invites us. And by the way, the last time we did this, 12 counties invited us to come and do it, and 4 states invited us to come. So we're just going to keep spreading this message. And today, obviously, we're focusing on life, but the whole country is in need of a righteous uprising. I do want to apologize to you for the lateness of me getting your materials to you. Today we had 300 bags out front that have baby feet in the bottom. Don't forget the baby feet are in your bag. And a Constitution, and of course the Constitution is what we're focusing on here in a minute. We have 2 experts that are getting ready to talk to you in just a minute about what you can do to become the person that God wants you to be. We're in this for the long haul, okay? Till Jesus comes. That's when we quit. As Pastor Darlene says, we don't quit until we win. And so we're going to be meeting every 2 to 3 weeks, and you can email us now at Patriot America 76 to get in touch with me, and I'll try to be in touch with you as much as I can. Obviously, I have got to tell you, this has totally exploded. I mean, we've even heard from Andrew Womack and a lot of people that are looking at what we're doing, and it's all because of you and your interest in what we're doing. Up here, I have laid up here for anybody here from Warren County. There is information here for anybody from Warren County that's interested in running for office on how you can reach out and find out information about that. If you are from Butler County, there is a list laying right here of all of the 137 open seats this year that can be filled by Christian conservatives. You can win it. City Council, School Board, Township Trustee, we're taking it, okay? We're so in your face, we're running. And the other thing is I have a list of all of the Central Committee members in Butler County. There, some of the precincts are empty, and you need to look at those and think about running for office in those. Also, we've got a script out front, the Equality Act that passed last week, a total travesty, a nightmare, a constitutional train wreck. We have a description of what it is and a script that you can use to call your state legislator and let them have it. And also, I have information out front and in your bag with our email address if you want to get in contact with me. There's also a sign-up sheet out front, how you can become part of our team. If you're a person who's good with fundraising or campaigning or voter registration, there's 100 different ways you can get involved. And running for office, obviously, it's not for everybody. It's a full contact sport. But it has to happen, and it has to be filled by people who understand God and understand the Constitution. I don't know how many times I'm going to have to say that, but that's what I keep saying. The most important thing I need to tell you is we've been approached to do a podcast. So Patriot America is going podcast. This is not a third-party movement. This is a movement that is targeted at the people in our nation who want to move us back to righteousness and godliness. When I was a little girl, my dad gave me the book, Pilgrim's Progress, and there was a story in that story, a part of that story, where Pilgrim lays down one day. He's tired, and he's weary, and he lays down on a bench, and he falls asleep. And while he's asleep, resting, he has a scroll in his hand, which represents the map to the celestial city, which, of course, is the Bible. And the celestial city is heaven. We're all trying to get there, right? And he falls asleep, and he drops the scroll out of his hand, and it rolls down the hill, and he doesn't realize it. And when he wakes up, he continues to go on his journey, not realizing that he's lost the Bible out of his hand. And he goes on, and he gets into trouble. He meets some people that are kind of questionable, and he falls into a cave, and then he can't remember how to go. And he has to go all the way back and get the scroll, find the scroll on the ground. And we as Christians, of course, understand that analogy. But I am telling that to you today because we have lost our Constitution. We dropped it somewhere along the way. We fell asleep, and we didn't think it was important, but now we can't go forward without it. And so what we have created for you is, and by the way, I want to can you put up the picture of Janet praying at the State House? This is Janet. I wanted to put this up here because I saw her do this. That's how hard the battle was. She literally collapsed in the State House there and said the movement that began in prayer finished the very same way. So I just wanted to put that up there. This nation has never been this polarized since just before the Civil War. 1856, we began to really be divided. And so there are 193 nations in the world. We have only one constitution. We've only had one constitution since 1787. We've only had one form of government. Most nations don't have a constitution. Most have a violent uprising about every 20 years. The average constitution lasts about 17 years. And there's a picture of me with the Minister of Justice at the Knesset, Amir Ohana. And I introduced a bill recognizing Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. When we went to Israel, this prayer team, they're crazy. They prophesied over me, and they said, "You're going to the Knesset." And I said, "They're never inviting an Ohio State rep into the Knesset." But we were at the Dead Sea, and we got a phone call, "The Knesset wants you to come." It's amazing. And I went into the Knesset there and stood in front of all those Jewish flags. And they invited, and this is their Attorney General. And I presented him with my resolution, and I said to him, what kind of constitution do you have? And he said, "We don't have a constitution." And I said, "Why not?" And he said, "We cannot agree on a constitution." So you see this turmoil that we have all the time. And so, let me just remind you, I was probably the least important member of the Ohio House, right, John? And who got invited to see the Attorney General of Israel? Me. And while he was with me, he got a phone call from some guy named Benjamin Netanyahu, and who was in the building with us. So you can take that down. We're 4% of the world's population. We provide 25% of the world's wealth. We've presented more technology, manufacturing, medical advances than 96% of the world. Why have we been different? We've been different for one reason, because of God. John Adams is my favorite founder. They asked him when he was 80 years old. By that time, the nation was about 40 years old. And they said, the rest of the world kept waiting for us to falter and fail. They didn't think we could make it, And they said, "How did you survive all this? How did you make this happen?" And he said, "It happened because of preachers. Preachers, both black and white. That's how it happened." So when there's a revolution, you don't get an invitation to it. You're just in it. You're just in it. It's join or die. Remember that? Join or die. So just like Esther, we're at a turning point. We have no choice. You have to run for office, whether you want to or not. You have to pray, whether you want to or not. And you have to dig your heels in and stand up, because believe me, the other side is doing that. And we have to not back down. So the plan today will not seem impressive to you, but hear me out. I like to read biographies. One of the biographies I read one time was a guy named Vince Lombardi, greatest coach ever. And he said, winning is not a habit, but wanting to win is. And that's where I'm at. I want us to win. So the first pillar, we've got 4 pillars, is, hold on, I'm trying to get caught up. We did the national anthem. Okay, here is why we need to work locally. And now is your time. Here is our mission statement. You need to learn more about your U.S. Constitution. We're getting ready to do that for you. Knowing what our founders planned for us helps us hold on to what we have. Secondly, we are here to find candidates that can run. Locally, these are nonpartisan races. School board, look what the schools are doing. You know, there's a big transgender agenda being pushed right on down the road here, locally. You need school board members to run. City council. The third thing is position each county a sheriff who understands the Constitution. If your sheriff is against constitutional carry, you need a new sheriff. And lastly, maintain in each county a citizens group that will continue to move forward. Next, I've got listed, there are 137 open seats in Butler County. There is a list of those seats right there. Take it and look and see if you live in Ross Township or Hanover, wherever you live. See if there's something open you might want to do. The filing deadline is August the 3rd. The election is November the 2nd. So, and you can, I've got those printed out for you. You don't even have to go looking for them. Next, conservative constitutional candidates need to run. You need to run for Central Committee. What is Central Committee? Our nation is divided into what is called precincts, which is just neighborhoods. And your neighborhood has anywhere from 500 to 1,500 people in it. Each little neighborhood has a person who represents them, and that's called a Central Committee person. In Butler County, there's 244 precincts. Therefore, there's 244 Central Committee members. Those members are elected for 4 years, and they stay put to push forth and endorse and help conservative candidates in Butler County. And there's more details there. This is all on our Facebook page and will be on our website as soon as it's ready. Start attending. The next one says begin attending all committee meetings where your elected officials serve. Lots of you anybody here live in a township? That's a lot of people. How many of you live in Westchester Township or Liberty Township or Fairfield Township? Your state rep's right there. She'll give you her phone number. That's your person right there. And so you need to start showing up at these school board meetings. You know what's scary to an office holder? When somebody shows up to the meeting. It's real scary for them. School board meetings, start going to your city council meetings, start going to your commissioner meetings. Did you know the height of your fence depends on what your township trustees let you do? Or how many cows you can have or horses? That's all your township trustees. We had the craziest, I'll just digress for a second. We had a chicken bill. Remember the chicken bill? These township trustees come in the state house with chickens and goats and rabbits, determined to have chickens. And you know what? Our nation, Ohio has the most rigid local control. And the truth is the state can't do anything that a township says no. And so I went to them and I said, I love chickens. I eat chicken. But if you want chickens in your township, you're going to have to either convince your township to let you have chickens because the state can't interfere, or you're going to have to run for township trustee and then make it the rule that you're allowed to have chickens. That's the way local control works. Remember, these people work for you. You don't work for them. You're paying their salary and their big old health insurance. So they answer to you. We need more constitutionally minded citizens. Patriot America needs people to work polling locations, work the polling locations. Everybody needs to be accountable. And the rule at the polling locations is this: for every Democrat, there has to be a Republican. And that did not happen in November. Did not happen. We have a list also on our Facebook page of people you need to begin to listen to. Please don't watch the news. Please don't watch the news. Do not watch the networks. It's awful. Chris Ann Hall is a terrific constitutionalist. I listen to her as much as I can. Dennis Prager is fabulous. We have a list of books for you to get. Leave them on your nightstand. Doctrine of the Lesser Magistrates is 69 pages. I read it on an airplane. Changed my life. Let me know that we are the boss. They work for us. So what's your call to action? Sign up for a Constitution class. We're getting ready to put up the 2 best teachers there are. They'll quickly go through what you need. Look at those open seats and think about it. Don't let the devil tell you nothing about your life, okay? Don't ever think that you're not rich enough, smart enough, pretty enough. And I tell this story sometimes that when I got to the State House, couldn't even believe I won. I got in the elevator with all these, attorneys and stuff, and they all had on suits, and they were taller than me and everything. And I looked around and I thought, what am I doing here? How'd I get here? Who are these people? After a year, John, am I right? I looked around in the elevator and thought, what are y'all doing here? They didn't do nothing. Voted yes on everything. Terrible. Started attending meetings. And then, so I put here at the bottom, every representative has 115,000 constituents in Ohio. Reach out to your representative by telephone, and if you say to them, I want to talk to you, they're going to talk to you. Because the scariest words for any legislator to hear from you is, I live in your district. That's all you got to say. They're making time for you. They're going to make time for you. I'm going to make sure I tell you about our next, there's my picture in our email address, or I'm sorry, our Facebook, it's Facebook page and email address. Please remember on March 20th, we're going to do a little bit different program. We're doing the very same thing today we did 3 weeks ago, but Josh Mandel was our former Ohio treasurer, staunchly pro-life, stood against the establishment, and had extraordinary courage when it came to the things of God. And he is going to be speaking again about, I want you to feel the courage. Do you feel the courage rising up within you? Like you're not alone. And then Jack Windsor was such a tough reporter that Governor DeWine would actually get a look on his face when he saw Jack. And he was the only reporter that really asked the tough questions, to the point where he eventually lost his job, and probably for unknown reasons. So the Ephesians 6 and 12 says, we are not wrestling against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, and against spiritual wickedness in high places. And I know we are the people, but this nation is literally run by the people. And that is you. And so we're working at the local level to build a Patriot team. I don't know where this is going. I'll tell you one thing, y'all are the talk of the town. Because I did 3 podcasts last Monday, one right after the other, and got called from the New York Times. They want to know who you are and what you're doing. And we're doing a lot. And of course, I literally have, as you all, I have a smartphone. I have phone numbers that say, New York Times, do not answer. And so I don't talk to reporters. I want to introduce to you now one of the most amazing people I've met. Jim Lewis runs Building Blocks for Liberty. He's getting ready to give you information you need to hear, life-changing. And hold on to what he says, because when he gets done, Ricky Pepin is going to talk to you about masks and really important things about that. So, Jim, I welcome you to the podium here, and let him have it.
Thank you, Candace. All right. How many of you were at our last meeting? So we got a bunch of new people? Good. So you won't be bored with what I'm going to say. The other guys have already seen it. Just to go along with the theme here of how God's been working, Building Blocks for Liberty, we hold one-day boot camp classes. We call them a boot camp because we feed you information through a fire hose, just like they do in boot camp. Okay, it's one-day class, 6 hours. We haven't held one in 14 months. I thought, well, when we hold our next one, what's going to happen? Well, we have our next class next Saturday, our first public class. 107 people have signed up for that class. That's a record by far. We've been doing this since 2013, and that's the most people we've ever had sign up for a class. So I think God is moving people to want to understand their government. And the only way you can understand your government is to understand the Constitution. If you don't understand the Constitution, and first you've got to understand the Declaration of Independence, or you won't understand the Constitution. And if you don't understand natural law, you're not going to understand the Declaration of Independence. You want to learn about that stuff, we teach it. The Institute on the Constitution teaches it. We will bring you up step by step from natural law through the Declaration, through the Constitution, how God ordained this country and built it. We are a Christian nation. Don't let me tell you we're not. Listen to the founders, what they have to say, and you'll know we're a Christian nation. In our class, we've got a segment that talks about the founders saying, here's what you can do to keep your republic. And it's all about religion and morality. It's all what it's about. All right, my presentation, ready to let it rock, please? All right, what can we do? Okay, you've got the Equality Act passed by the House. What happens if it passed by the Senate? You think Joe's going to sign it? I think the regime leader will sign it. And when that happens, what are we going to do? Okay, what do you do to overcome federal law that's either one, bad, or two, unconstitutional? Okay, if you look in Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, there's nowhere where it says that Congress has the ability to legislate on things like gender or sex or who goes to what bathroom. None of that's, they can't do that. So this Equality Act bill, like probably 70 to 80% of all the bills that come out of Congress, are unconstitutional, okay? So what do we do here about to stop that? Well, there's lots we can do at the local level, your township, your county, especially at the state. We have to motivate people at the state level especially to do their job. Next slide, please. Thomas Jefferson said we have to educate and inform the whole mass of the people. You guys are the only sure reliance for the preservation of liberty. If you don't get educated and get your kids and grandkids educated, you know, it doesn't mean we're going to lose because, you know, God's in charge, not us, but it'll make it a lot easier. Next slide, please. And just go to the next slide after that. You got to understand a few things. The founders built this country on what's called enumerated powers. That means listed powers. That means every power the federal government has is listed in the Constitution. In Article 1, Section 8 are all the powers listed for the Congress. In Article 1, Section 1, Clause 1 in the Constitution, the very first line in the Constitution says, all legislative power herein granted shall be vested in a Congress of the United States, which shall consist of a Senate and a House of Representatives. Nobody but Congress can legislate. So, Article 1, Section 8 lists the main powers Congress has, and in those powers is nothing about health care or education or about gender equality or about any of that. It's all just basic stuff to run the country and do the things we gave them to do. We delegated power to the federal government through the Constitution. That power is enumerated. You got to understand that. Next slide, please. Anything that's not listed, they can't do. So we got this saying, it's not on the list. Do they have that power? Nope, not on the list. They can't do it. Madison said in a speech to the Virginia Ratifying Convention, the powers of the federal government are enumerated. Okay, next slide, please. I'm kind of going a little fast because I want to make sure we get you guys out of here on time. The government of the United States is a definite government. Definite means defined. Defined means they've got certain powers they can't go past. Okay, next slide, please. In Federalist number 45, perhaps the most clear enunciation by one of the founding fathers, and the guy who's called the father of the Constitution, by the way, where he said, the powers delegated by the proposed constitution to the federal government are few and defined, while those remaining to the states are numerous and indefinite. Next slide, please. He even goes on to say that the former, talking about the powers the federal government has, will be exercised principally on objects such as peace, war, negotiation, and foreign commerce. And then he said everything else belongs to the states and the people. So how can you look at this and then look at what our government's doing today and say they're not being unconstitutional? Next slide, please. The 10th Amendment, we call that a rule of construction. It tells you how to read the Constitution, because the 10th Amendment says the power is not delegated by the Constitution to the United States, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. So anything that's not listed, they can't do. That's what it says. If they can't do it, who can do it? The states, the people. That's who can do it. Okay? Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Thank you. So, what can we do? Who's heard of nullification in here? Okay? Nullification, a lot of people hear it and they go, oh, scary nullification. Didn't the South do that during the Civil War? No. Who used nullification prior to the Civil War? The northern states who were nullifying federal fugitive slave laws. That's who used nullification, not the South. What was one of the top 3 reasons all the states who seceded gave for seceding? The states in the North nullifying fugitive slave laws. They didn't like nullification. So no, don't associate it with the South, because it's not. Nullification is a good thing. And nullification simply means we refuse to do it. That's all it means. Okay, next slide, please. You find the origins for nullifications in the writings of Thomas Jefferson and James Madison. We weren't a country. Our government wasn't in effect more than 8 years when they passed the Alien and Sedition Acts, which basically made it against the law to speak ill of anybody basically who was a Federalist, the president, people in the Congress, except for the guy who was the vice president at the time, which was Thomas Jefferson. He wasn't a Federalist, so you could speak ill of him all you wanted, but you couldn't speak ill of anybody else. Now, how do you go from being a country where you want freedom of speech, freedom of the press, to that in less than 8 years? That just shows you how bent people are. Our spirits are sick and sinful, and it doesn't take long for that to take over again. So the nullification finds its origins in the writings of Thomas Jefferson and James Madison. They wrote the Kentucky and the Virginia resolutions of 1798, which basically said the federal government doesn't have the power to do the Alien Sedition Acts, and that the rightful remedy, as Thomas Jefferson said, is for these states to nullify those laws. He said that nullification was a natural right the states had. Basically, it was given to us by God as a way to prevent the federal government from trampling on us. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. I'm skipping a lot of this stuff. Jefferson said in the Kentucky resolutions that every state of its own authority can nullify within its territory all perceived violations of the Constitution by the federal government. You're not saying when you nullify that law can't be enforced anywhere. It's just saying you can pass the law. We recognize that it's unconstitutional, therefore we will not enforce that law in our state. Okay? Now, when you go and talk to your state rep or your state senator, most of them, with the exception of Jennifer Gross over here, they will look at you like you're crazy when you say nullification, like you've said, you've yelled fire in a theater. They're going to tell you you're nuts. They're going to say, we can't nullify because if we do, the federal government will cut off our funds, or they'll do this, or they'll do that. Well, let's go on. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Hamilton said in Federalist Paper number 78 that no legislative act contrary to the Constitution can be valid. Okay, this is before it was even ratified. They're saying if they pass a law that goes against what the Constitution says, it's not a valid law. Therefore, the states are not obliged to follow it. Okay, this is where the nullification comes from, is writings like this explaining this is what the Constitution meant to the people who actually ratified it, because that's what the Constitution means. What did it mean to the people who ratified it? That's what it means. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So, what are the two conditions that must be present for nullification to really be effective and really be, the state be able to enforce it? One, it needs to be something that's unconstitutional. An act has to be passed that's unconstitutional, and it must require the states or the people to do something. Otherwise, you can't really resist something you don't have to do anything about. So that's what they're saying. You got to have those two conditions present. Next slide, please. Under Article 6, Clause 2 of the Constitution, that's the supremacy clause. That's what people like to throw out and say, well, if federal law is passed by Congress and signed by the president, it's supreme. Well, they haven't read Article 6, Clause 2 of the Constitution, because it says that any law that's made that's not pursuant to the Constitution, or contrary, any treaty that's passed that's contrary to the Constitution, is not valid. That's what it says in Article 6, Clause 2. So the Supremacy Clause says it has to be a constitutional law for it to be the supreme law of the land. You got to understand that one too. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. If you start looking at what the founders said, all of them, to a man, all the main ones said, the state legislatures will be the surest prevention of the federal government overreaching. The state legislatures will stand up and stop the federal government. They said, you don't have to worry because the state legislatures are the ones that are going to stop the federal government. I mean, that's what they all just kept saying over and over. And I put a lot of quotes in there about that. Next slide, please. Theophilus Parsons, who was the Supreme Court Justice in Massachusetts, said at the Massachusetts Ratifying Convention that it will be upon 13 legislatures having the means as well as the inclination successfully to oppose any overstep by the federal government. Next slide, please. Hamilton said in Federalist 28, it may be safely received as an axiom in our political system that the state governments will, in all possible contingencies, afford complete security against invasions of the public liberty by the national authority. Okay? These guys are saying state legislatures are going to be our number one guards against overreach and usurpation by the federal government. Next slide, please. Here's what Jefferson said in the Kentucky resolutions, where powers are assumed which have not been delegated. And remember, the Constitution is one of powers we delegated to the federal government. That's what it's written about. A nullification of the act is the rightful remedy. Next slide, please. The right of nullification meant by Mr. Jefferson is the natural right, which all admit to be the remedy against insupportable oppression. It's James Madison in 1830. So when people say to me, well, nullification, you can't do that, you got to read what this guy has written about it. And I say, well, I know Madison, and I know Jefferson, and I know Parsons, but I don't know that guy. Okay? I go back to the source. This is what these guys told us to do. Okay? Now, here we get, like I said, your legislator's going to say, oh, they're going to take away the money. You can't do this, Next slide, please. There's a little thing called anti-commandeering. Okay? It's something that the Supreme Court came up with. They said that basically the federal government cannot force the state government to enforce federal law. Next slide, please. There are some cases here I want to show you. In Prigg versus Pennsylvania, Joseph Story, this is back in 1842, he said that the federal government could not force states to implement or carry out the Fugitive Slave Act of 1793. Can't make you do it. Then, in 1992, in New York versus the United States, the court held that the regulations in their low-level radioactive waste policy amendment act of 1985 were coercive and violated the sovereignty of New York. Next slide, please. Prince versus the United States. At issue was the provision in the Brady gun bill that required county law enforcement officers to administer part of the background check program. Sheriff Jay Prince and Richard Mack sued, saying we don't have to do that, and the court agreed. Next slide, please. If we refuse to enforce, they'll withhold all funds. Well, let's look at this one. In Independent Business versus Sebelius, the court held that the federal government cannot compel states to expand Medicaid by threatening to withhold funding for Medicaid programs already in place. So they can't withhold funds for programs the states are administering, only ones that you're not going to administer. And if you're not administering it, why do you need the funds? Next slide, please. The last one is Murphy versus the NCAA in 2018. This is pretty recent. The court held that Congress can't take any action that dictates what a state legislature may and may not do, even when the state action conflicts with federal law. So, can we nullify? Yes. Is it effective? Well, yeah. If you're not enforcing a federal law in the state of Ohio, then what's going to happen to Indiana and Kentucky? They're going to go, hey, we can do that too. If you go to the 10thAmendmentCenter.com, you will see people are nullifying things left and right out there, state legislatures, from federal gun laws, where they're just nullifying them completely within the state, saying federal gun laws are null and void in the state. We are not going to enforce them. State governments don't have, or the federal government doesn't have the personnel to enforce their own law. They rely on state and local authorities to do it. And if they refuse to do it, then we're golden, we're good. So what you have to do is learn about nullification so you're confident enough to talk to your state rep and your state senator or other state reps and senators nearby and tell them this is what we need to do. How are we going to be protected against the Equality Act? By the state of Ohio's legislature and governor passing a resolution and signing it saying we're not going to enforce it in the state of Ohio. That's all they got to do. I will leave you with that because time's short. Thank you very much. We have a table out there if you want to learn more about us. We do have a class on April 10th that we still have seats available for if anybody wants to come. Thank you.
Thank you. I know that's a ton of information. It's a lot, but just remember, by acting in this way, by doing what we're getting ready to do, we can change. First of all, we can't do anything about that presidential train wreck that just happened, okay? November 3rd, that's all over. Quit looking back. We're moving forward. But we can change Ohio. We can change Ohio in 6 months. You know why? Because there's an election coming up. That's one thing. We can change the Ohio House next year, and it needs to be changed. We can change the governorship in 16 months, and that will be changed. And I hope you're understanding. This was like a slow waking up for me when I first began to take Constitution classes, and I finally realized that the states created the federal government. It's not the other way around. So we're really like 50 little tiny countries shoved together to make one great big country, and it's our job. We shouldn't even notice the federal government. I mean, their powers are severely limited. We as the states should rise up and say, when they do this Equality Act, all we have to do is have a legislator. It's already in the Constitution. We make laws all the time that are already in the Constitution, but you have to keep doing it. And we just have to say, hey, feds, we're ignoring the Equality Act. We're not doing that in Ohio. Bye. That's all you do. And so if the legislatures individual, I'm talking about in Ohio, in Georgia, in Pennsylvania, if they would have acted appropriately last year, if the Georgia legislature had a brain in their head and the governor had any courage at all, we would have a totally different situation. But as it is, I'm trusting God that what has happened has now raised us up to become who we needed to be. We're going to be setting up chairs here and we've got question and answer time coming up. I put 4x6 cards in your bags. If you don't have a card, there's cards out on the table. Please write your questions down. We're going to be answering any question that you have about anything having to do with what's being said here today. Ricky Pepin is coming from the Institute on the Constitution. She's going to talk for 5 minutes. She dropped a bomb on us last time and told us, I'm going to tell this, that masks are considered a medical device that can only be distributed by a medical professional. Have you ever in your life... we heard gasps from the audience, and so she's going to talk to us about a little bit more about what we've heard, and then we're going to have it open. And Janet will be up here, and anybody who's spoken today, you can ask anything you want. Just lay your questions right up here on the steps, and we'll get them. Ricky Pepin.
Thank you. Oh, hi. All right. You've been hearing now about the federal level and about the state level, and I'm going to tell you how to bring this back into your own backyard to take charge of it again, okay? Martin Luther King said, "The church must be reminded that it is the conscience, guide, and critic of the state." Did you catch that? You guys are in charge of the state. So here we are today to remind that church of that powerful truth and to put it into action. We've all been watching with dismay as our freedoms have been stolen away by Ohio governor and health director mandates, and now by executive orders. And everybody's wanting to know, how can we stop this? Or can we stop this? And the answer is a resounding yes. And it's that tool that Jim just told you about, the Founding Fathers gave us, called the Doctrine of the Lesser Magistrate, which includes the principles of nullification and interposition. Black's Law Dictionary simply defines nullification as the act of making something void, the action of a state in abolishing a federal law on the basis of state sovereignty, abolishing it. Interposition is the action of a state while exercising its sovereignty in rejecting a federal mandate that it believes is unconstitutional or overreaching. These tools are the essence of local control through lawful authority. Our American government was established as a bottom-up authority structure, not a top-down one. And the doctrine of the lesser magistrate provides the simplest and quickest means to rein in that higher authority who spurned its limitations, whether it's federal, state, or local. And this principle is actually rooted in Scripture, and it's found throughout history. For example, Ohio and most of this nation has found itself in dire financial, health, and emotional turmoil due to the government mandates and decrees, forcing lockdowns of businesses, schools, churches, curtailing your family functions, graduations, weddings, funerals, and even visiting your loved ones in nursing homes. Personal health care decisions have been made for us. Wear a face mask, stay 6 feet apart, take a vaccination if you want to keep your job. Well, here's the truth. Mandates or decrees from elected officials or unelected bureaucrats are not law. That's huge. Law is made only by elected legislative bodies. Mandates and decrees carry no force of law, no legal authority, and here's the application of the doctrine of the lesser magistrate. When illegal mandates are issued, are you listening? We, the people, are under no obligation to obey them. Any lesser magistrate, such as a county sheriff, the township trustee, city council members, has the responsibility to protect citizens by using their authority under the doctrine of lesser magistrate to protect citizens by nullifying or not enforcing any and all illegal mandates. It is part of the oath of office that they took, a promise before God. No paperwork is required, though they can write a resolution. No lawsuit needs to be filed, though they can if they want to make a legal precedent. Simply standing up and saying no to enforcing these illegal mandates that strip American citizens of their God-given freedom to worship, to work, to go to school, to make your own personal health decisions. The problem is that there's very few elected officials that are aware of this authority structure and their lawful responsibility to uphold it. Now, you guys know. Woo! What are you going to do with it? Well, I'm going to give you some examples because I'm a real rubber meets the road kind of person, okay? We've got a book out there at my table today. We've got a few things, but this Doctrine of the Lesser Magistrate book, Candace said it changed her life and it can change yours too as you understand the principles. And we're just going to go over a few of them here and show you what that looks like. As a private citizen, you know, a business owner in Troy recently, she understood that she was going to lose everything she owned if she was forced to keep her business closed. She began speaking to her fellow business owners, and she invited them to a meeting to reopen against the governor's mandates. Now, she was smart. She also invited the sheriff, and she invited the mayor. They explained the doctrine of the lesser magistrate and their duty to nullify these illegal mandates, and then they declared their intent to reopen their businesses. The sheriff and the mayor both supported this law once they knew it, and the Troy businesses began to open again. That was one person having one meeting, and look what happened. Let's look at your local government meetings. Here's another opportunity to be what Martin Luther King said, that conscience, guide, and critic of the state. As Candace said, start to attend these local government meetings, city council, township trustees, county commissioners, school board. But here's a key. Don't go alone. Take 2 or 3 friends with you who understand this principle. Bring a copy of your lesser magistrate book with you. When time is allotted for the citizen input or questions, briefly educate your local officials on this principle of the lesser magistrate, illegal mandates, and their duty to protect citizens' God-given rights by nullifying unconstitutional overreach in relation to these shutdowns. But don't just present them with information. Now that they know the law, they're accountable to it. And you need to ask them specific questions as to how do they plan to obey the law and get local businesses, schools, and churches open again, and allow individuals to make their own personal health decisions. For example, you could say briefly, when you were elected, you took an oath before God to defend the Ohio and U.S. constitutions. Now that you know that these governor mandates are not law, but they actually violate the law, what are your plans to obey the law, to protect and restore your citizens' freedoms, to allow them to choose whether or not to reopen their businesses, churches, and schools? I give you the remainder of my time to answer. Please be specific. And then wait. Okay? Put them on the spot. Well, now the next person up that came with you doesn't have to explain that lesser magistrate doctrine. They can go straight to their question. What's your plan to restore citizens' rights to make their own personal health choices, to decide for themselves whether or not to wear a mask, to social distance, to take vaccinations, to limit the customers in their stores? I yield my 3 minutes to you. Please answer and be specific. You just walked out Martin Luther King's instructions. You guided the governing officials by telling them a truth that they did not know. Now you are their conscience, and that you're going to hold them accountable to that truth. And you're going to become their critic real big time if they don't start to obey the law, and you can find somebody else who will run and will. The next place you can use this, that we need to use this, get to know your sheriff and ask the right questions. Ask them, do you consider yourself to be a constitutional sheriff? Have you taken an Institute on the Constitution course? Are you familiar with the Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association? Are you a member? Why or why not? If the current administration issues an executive order that they're going to confiscate legally owned firearms, and that they're going to go door to door if necessary, soliciting the help of all police departments in every state and every county sheriff's office, will you stop that? Well, hopefully your sheriff is going to say, well, no, I wouldn't do that. But your response needs to be polite but firm and say, no, I didn't ask if you would help. I said, would you stop that? Would you stand and interpose and protect us from gun confiscation by any state or federal official that seeks to violate my rights under the Second Amendment of the Constitution. Do you understand that you have the authority and the duty to do this? You know, this is a really important question due to the threats of the Biden administration relating to gun rights. And depending on your sheriff's answer, you can begin to share information about this doctrine of the lesser magistrate, nullification and interposition. You can share your book. You could tell them about Cspoa Trainings for the law enforcement officers that will teach them how to do their job not only effectively, but lawfully. They will learn that their oath of office is to support and defend the Constitution, not unlawful state or federal mandates or executive orders that violate your personal freedoms, your unalienable rights. Such degrees have no legal authority. Remember, only legislative bodies make law. However, the Biden administration is seeking to pass legislation to limit gun rights and confiscate certain weapons. You need to know, and your sheriff needs to know, that if such legislation should pass, it's still unenforceable because it changes the Constitution by overruling the Second Amendment. If you want to overrule the Constitution, you have to pass an amendment. And that requires a 3/4 majority in both houses, not just 51% for a new law. This is why it's so important that you know your Constitution, and your elected officials do. Citizens and sheriffs need to learn these tenets for self-defense. The Cspoa trainings are open to the public in addition to law enforcement, so you guys could take them too. They cover critical topics relating to personal freedom, such as enforcing mandated personal health decision, business closures, or limitations. Here's just a couple more sample questions to determine your sheriff's understanding of this type of personal freedom. Will you enforce face masks? Will you enforce mandated vaccination? Will you enforce shutting down my business or my church? When you go to these meetings and when you talk to your officials, be prepared with some legal backup data so that you can share this with your friends, your coworkers, business owners, etc. We've got several groups forming in Ohio now that have started to help us to get our freedoms back, and one of them is called Free Ohio Now. And they've put together an incredible array of documents to protect citizens and businesses from unlawful mandates. I have included a link to those. I'll have some of those documents that you can look at my table. And if you get the stuff that Candace will be sending you by email, you'll have the link, and so you can download or look at all of those yourself and make as many copies as you want. We're going to look at 3 quick examples just to give you an idea of how powerful this is. And we've got some other ladies here today, thank you, Barb and friend, wherever you are, who actually put what I'm going to share with you right now on these little 3x5 cards. So you can carry these things when you in your purse or pocket when you go into the store, should you get challenged, okay? For example, as Candace told you, you stole my thunder, Candace. In the state of Ohio, face masks are regulated as a medical device. Even just recommending that someone wear a regulated medical device, a mask, is the unlicensed practice of medicine. And the Ohio Revised Code, and we give you the section so you can go right to it and look this up yourself. Don't take my word for it, look it up. According to the Ohio Revised Code, that is a 5th-degree felony. Whoa. And even under licensed medical care, a person still has the right to choose whether or not to wear that device or not. Forcing a customer to wear a mask to enter a business establishment is illegal under the Civil Rights Law, Title II, which requires that a place of public accommodation, every business must provide free and equal access to all services and facilities without discrimination. And the Ohio Revised Code further prohibits a business from preventing your entry if you don't have on a face mask because no law has been broken. Store policy does not make an action legal that is otherwise illegal. These are huge truths. And then just a couple medical facts, and we'll wrap this up. There is no legitimate scientific study published that shows that face masks will stop a virus. Not one. Not one. And there's many that show they don't. In fact, face masks pose their own risk, not the least of which is hypoxia, which is lower levels of oxygen that affects all of your body functions. And studies have actually shown that this impairs your immunity, which would actually increase your chance of getting the virus. Face masks also provide a warm, moist environment that is the perfect breeding ground for COVID as well as a host of other bacteria and viruses. And here's a serious question. Where is the pandemic if 99.8% of the people who get sick recover? Why? Why were other recent pandemics like SARS and MERS, which were both coronaviruses that reached the United States in 2017 and 14 respectively and were transmitted the same way, why were they never declared an emergency when these highly contagious diseases had a much higher mortality rate than the current one? Personal health decisions are just that. They're personal, and they can't be mandated by law. The bottom line, study the Constitution. Learn your rights so that you can get your freedoms back. Use the doctrine of the lesser magistrate in your local meetings, in your personal life, and join your efforts with others. And here's the way you can do that, okay? Jim works those great building blocks for liberty. If you've got a day to go in there, you'll get a crash course on the Constitution, and I encourage you to do that if that's you only have a day. But I work for a group called the Institute on the Constitution, and what I'm sharing with you today, ours is a 12-part course, and so we really get in the weeds, and we teach you, what we say is we put feet on the Constitution. All right, we teach you how to walk out and how to use that document and how to apply it to various situations. There's 3 ways you can take this class. You can go online and take it. Once again, this information it's available at our table as well as in this document that you can get from Candace. You can take it online for free. But if you do, you're sitting in front of your computer watching the DVDs, looking at the PDFs all by yourself. If you got no other choice, that's okay. Get it into you, but that's the least choice, okay? Second one is you can purchase a student kit. That has the 12 DVD lessons and a student manual. You can invite a group of friends over to your house and just sit in your living room and watch these DVDs together and have some discussion afterwards with a small, comfortable setting. But the third and the best option of all is to take or host an in-person class. We get into discussions, we get into applications. The knowledge that you're going to gain from these classes are the tools that will lead you to freedom. But you've got to know know what those tools are, and you got to know how to use them. I have contacted several of my teaching leaders in the counties that I've been in, mostly in Southwest Ohio today, and several of them have agreed to hold a class. And so if you live in the counties that I've got covered are Miami, Darke, Montgomery, Franklin, Fairfield, Clark, Champaign, and Preble. We've got sign-up sheets at my table with the details, and if you give us the details, we'll get in touch with you and see if you can take that class. If your county was not mentioned, I want to make a really strong recommendation. In a group this size, I know that there's got to be a lot of teachers out there, and there's also leaders that would be capable of hosting this class. Our full host kit equips you to do just that. It includes the DVDs, the student manual, and the teacher's manual has a step-by-step instructions that are so simple and clear, you can literally read off the pages to lead this class. See me at my table if you're interested in knowing more. We want every county in Ohio teaching this. When you decide to start a class, if you email me, I'll email Candace, and she's going to blast it out to everybody who's ever come to these Patriot America groups, and you can see when there's a class near you, and you can call and sign up for it. Last thing I'm going to share with you is that you all had a sheet in your packet, if you got one today, that says the Institute on the Constitution membership application. We need your help to get this constitutional knowledge spread far and wide. The membership includes free access to all of the online courses we offer. It gives you a 10% discount off everything in the store, and it's all tax deductible. And if we run out of materials at the table, which is probably pretty likely, if you can pay for it today, we'll ship it to you for free, so there'll be no shipping charges. We're also developing state constitution courses. So once again, if you're interested in joining this movement, fill this out, bring it back to the table, and I'll close with remembering where I started. Remember the words of Martin Luther King Jr. It's the church, and by the way, that's you know that, right? It's not a building. The church must be reminded that it is the conscience, guide, and critic of the state. Amen. We got our work cut out. Freedom isn't free, but if we work together, we can get it back. Thank you.
Okay, I just want to let you know I've set my timer. We've gone a little bit over. We're just going to have our experts come up here for just 10 minutes of questions and answers. I just need you to know, once again, if you could make a donation, this would help us so much, because we are literally wanting to take this to every county in Ohio, and we really need your help to do that. We are Facebook Live right now, by the way. I meant to tell you, we're being live streamed, and we are blowing up with people, hundreds and hundreds of people asking questions. How can they do this in their county? And I was sitting over there trying to look at the messages. There's too many, and it'll take me weeks to respond. But as our experts come up, I'm going to start reading these questions that we just got. And the first one says, we as private citizens have no obligation to follow illegal mandates, but private businesses can and have been enforcing them. How can we turn that tide and get businesses to stop going along with these mandates? I'm specifically interested in masks. The Warren County Sheriff has said he will not enforce this, but businesses still make us comply. How can we compel taxpayer-funded institutions like public libraries to reopen?
Okay. Education. We got into this mess because we didn't know any better. Now you do. And so I would encourage you, pick up these cards and just have them with you everywhere you go. Don't be obnoxious about it, but just go in. And if somebody challenges you, take the time to ask to speak to the manager, because this will set them free too. The governor has asked, you realize that by the governor putting this face mandate on businesses, he is asking them to be police. He's asking them to be law enforcement. And he's asking them to enforce a law that isn't a law. And so you can set them free. I mean, just real quick, because we're late, but I don't wear a mask when I go places. And a lady approached me in Kroger one day and asked me, don't you have to wear a face mask? And I just said politely, no, ma'am, I don't. And she said, do I? And I said, not if you don't want to. That woman almost got whiplash pulling that mask off of her face. People don't know. So let's start to tell them.
Okay, you can pass it. The next question is from a person who would like to run for office, but they feel like they have too many skeletons in their closet. Anybody relate to that one? Anybody heard of this guy, Bill Clinton? I'm just like, I'm sorry that we have had to lower the bar, but there are totally members of Congress who haven't paid their taxes in years, okay? So if you think you have a calling to run for office, or just email me, I'll meet with you and we can talk about that. There's that. How did the governor get away with declaring an emergency declaration without a vote by the General Assembly? I'll answer that question. We never took a vote. I was there. It takes a 2/3 vote by both houses of the legislature to create a public health emergency. We never did that. The governor acted unlawfully. Am I right? He has acted unlawfully in these mandates and orders because the public health director was given no authority by the legislature. The legislature is you. You're the legislature. Secondly, when he canceled the primary in March of last year, he broke both state and federal law. John Becker, are you still here? He introduced a bill impeaching the governor just for that. That's one of the reasons, and I co-sponsored with him. So. Okay. If a business requires a mask to enter, if I refuse, can I be prosecuted for failure to obey?
Absolutely not. And the question is, and if you're stopped, you might ask, the person stopping you, if it's a store manager, say, oh, let's volunteer. Say, let's go call the sheriff. And let's ask him, which ORC law am I breaking? Because there is none. Go with them. Ask him. Call the sheriff. Bring him. But tell him when he comes, I want him to bring with him the code of the law that I'm breaking, because it does not exist.
Okay, let me ask you this question. This is a personal question from me to Ricky. If you have a cart full of food and you get up to the cash register and they say to you, we're not checking you out unless you put a face mask on, then what do you say?
Again, you can figure out where you're going to take your stand. You can just leave your stuff there and walk out if you want to. You can whip out your little card and show them, I'm not breaking a law. And I heard somebody say trespassing back in there too, and I'll go ahead and cover that quickly too. You are not trespassing, again, unless you pose, I believe the legal term is posing a direct threat. And they can only prove that if you've got, medical things that you're carrying on you that show that you've had a diagnosis, but that's your private information. They can only prove that if you're going in there waving a gun around or screaming at people. But if you're just walking in without a face mask on, you are not guilty of trespass. That civil rights law protects you. And by the way, I would ask them, I would continue, I'd try to buy my groceries myself.
Okay, like check out yourself? Okay. Why aren't the southern border states nullifying the federal government's action on immigration and enforcing illegal crossing? Jim.
Same reason we're not doing things here in Ohio. They don't know. You talk to your state legislators, and I'll guarantee you 90% of them, if not more, don't know what nullification is and don't understand the responsibility of the state legislature to interpose and protect its people from the federal government's overreach. That's the whole job that the founders said the state legislature was supposed to do to protect their people. You just refuse to enforce federal laws that are unconstitutional. They can nullify them if they want to and refuse to enforce them in their state. Look at all these cities that did the, what was that called with the sanctuary cities. None of them enforced federal immigration law, and they were threatened with fund cut off, but did anybody ever get any funds cut off? No. They can't do it. So you watch cities do it, states can do it too. They just got to have the knowledge and the guts.
Okay, do essential workers have to be vaccinated? Can they refuse and keep their jobs?
Personal health decisions are personal health decisions. I mean, let me be clear too, that just when you go and you stand up for these things, just because you're right doesn't mean you're not going to be thrown out on your backside. Okay? Just because you're right doesn't mean, if your sheriff doesn't know any better, he may come out and try to arrest you. He may arrest you until you get there, and then he finds out, oh gosh, there's no statute. So just be aware of the risk. I don't want don't call me if you get thrown in jail, okay? Don't call me. Just be aware of your rights. Ask God for discretion and discernment wherever you go. Be as polite as you can. Smile when you say it. I was challenged walking into Walmart. The guy's like, oh, you have to wear a face mask. You have to wear a face mask. And I said, thank you so much. I know. And I kept walking. And he said, what did you say? I said, thank you very much. I know. And I kept walking. And he says, oh, she knows. You don't know what you can get away with if you don't try, okay? And the law is on your side.
Okay, all elected officials take an oath to protect and defend the Constitution. If an official fails that oath, can they be impeached?
Yes. Yes.
That's if you have a legislature that will do it?
Yes.
Okay, that's the problem.
The key.
Again, it's all local, you see. If the federal government threatens to withdraw federal monies, can the state legislatures nullify the federal income and business taxes?
Well, they won't need to, because the federal government's a bully. They will threaten and threaten like a bully does, but if the state punches them in the nose, they'll quit.
I don't know how much you know about SB 22. Maybe Representative Gross Please tell us the future prospects of Senate Bill 22 as I provided written testimony in support of this bill, and I wish to know the likelihood of its success. You want to speak to that, Representative?
So right now, the sponsor is House Rep Scott Wiggum, and the current plan is to take parts of HB 90. HB stands for House Bill 90. Part of that will be the Senate Bill 22 has already been passed. They will send that over to the House, and then we will insert parts of HB 90, and we are planning to vote on it on Wednesday. Now, the thing you need to know, how long does it take law to take effect? How long does the governor have to wait and sit on it? The governor can wait 10 days. The law takes effect 90 days later. So we're looking at July. Really, ultimately, what it is you have to stand up. HB 90 is the House version of Senate Bill 22. So we will insert that portion in. Now, you need to understand our Senate's a little bit more liberal, even though their majority is Republican, which is why you need to get active at the lower level. The swamp doesn't start in D.C., I'm just saying. It starts here, it goes to the House, and then it goes to the Fed.
Okay, tell them what Senate Bill 22 is.
Senate Bill 22. Oh, I'm sorry. Do you guys all know what Senate Bill 22 is? Oh, I'm so sorry. Senate Bill 22 is the one that gives the legislature, your voice, a seat at the table with the governor. So right now the governor has said with his physicians, we are in control, you aren't allowed to go here, businesses have to do this, and you are under my thumb. Well, they didn't ask your voice, which at that time was Representative Keller and Representative Becker, and so they just did these mask mandates and shut businesses down, right? So this bill is the one that cuts off the authority, which is the governor. He's using the health department to do that to you, even though it's all unconstitutional. So this bill is the one they tried to pass that the Senate president did not bring back up to override the governor's veto last year. Really, ultimately, what you guys don't understand is you have the power. We don't have the power. I need you behind me, which is why they said, meet with me, talk to me, ask your reps. But you have the power. You have the power. I'm one. Your trustees need to stand up with me. Your commissioners need to stand up with me. Everybody has to stand up. But you guys too. I need to go to Walmart. Who's going with me without a mask? Right? I need to go to Aldi. I need to go to Kohl's to remove something, to return something. Who's going with me? If you submit every time I come in, when I'm in there, if you're submitting to the mask and I'm the only one, I got my little name tag, just so you know, I've been in the news a lot lately. I got escorted out by the police, and it was all a lie, by the way. So I need you. I am the lesser magistrate, but I can't do it without you. So did I make sense? With Senate Bill 22 cuts off the governor's authority. Senate Bill 22 has been passed. It's coming to the House. It's weak. We are going to beef it up with putting some things from HB, House Bill 90, into it, and then we will send it back to the Senate with the hopes that something will happen. But again, remember, there's the speed of business and there's the speed of government.
Thank you, Representative. And again, I have a case of 200 of those books at my house that we're bringing in 2 weeks, Doctrine of the Lesser Magistrates. You are the magistrate. Remember, you are the magistrate. We in the House are the lesser magistrates. We listen to you, and then we do what you tell us. If you have a rep who doesn't do that, vote them out. Vote them out. All right. I've been trying to reach my representative. He will not call me. I have emailed him. I've had 2 people give him my information. It has been over a month. I have not heard from him. What should I do? Vote him out. Okay. I got my alarm set. We got like 1 more minute. How are we getting the ballot boxes secured and when? That's a great question, isn't it? I don't know why there is not a bill flying through the House right now on election integrity. If I were there, I'd be blowing that place up with that issue. If your voice doesn't count, nothing else we do matters. So that's a great question. There also needs to be an anti-mandatory vaccination bill flying through the House. That's just me. How do I find out about my township and my county and my local government? How do I get involved? Email me. I'll tell you how to do that. Nullification. You guys have asked terrific questions. Are there any constitutional classes that we can have taught in grade school, junior high, and high school?
Yes.
And can a legislator put that in an education bill? How does that work?
They're actually required on Constitution Day, which is September 17th, to be teaching from the founding, to give time to the Constitution. I don't know why they had to pass a law to make that happen, but they did. My organization, the Institute on the Constitution, has written the classes that we offer to adults are 90 minutes. Okay, that's not conducive to a classroom setting. And so we got offered a contract from a homeschool publishing company to work with them to create a classroom-ready curriculum for high school students, and we did. And it's out there. And so if you want to talk to your local school board people about that, I've got the materials. I would love to share it with you. You're going to run into pushback because we use the primary sources, which means we use the Founding Fathers' writing, which means it's loaded with God and Bible. So your work's cut out for you. But talk to me. Let's see what we can do.
I'm just going to close now. Thank you so much for your patience. We've gone over our time. And just a couple of reminders. Please reach out to me at patriot76@gmail. Please clean up around yourself when you leave, and because we don't have janitorial people coming in before church tomorrow. God told Ezekiel, I searched for a man so I would not have to judge a nation. I searched for a man so that I would not have to judge a nation. God is looking for people, individuals, to rise up and take these things so that he will not have to judge us for 47 years of aborting 65 million babies. God is not going to keep his head turned forever on that nightmare. And I thank you for coming today. Let me just pray before we dismiss. Lord, I thank you so much for this morning, everything that you did. You had your hand in all of it. I pray that you speak specifically to each person who was here, God. Lay on their heart what you want for them in the future of our county, of our state, and of our nation. Raise up a mighty army, bolstered by the courage that only comes from knowing Jesus Christ. I thank you for this. I ask that you help us again in 2 weeks when we do it again, Lord. Spread the word nationwide for us, Lord, like only you can do. And we ask in Jesus' name, amen. Thank you for coming. All these people will be in the back to talk to you, all of the panel experts and all of them.